This media is brought to you by Polyscope.
In the realm of tomorrow, where tech meets mind, we ponder, we dream.
Anytime. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to finally meet you because this is how we meet each other nowadays, over Zoom, right?
Right.
No more face-to-face. This is face-to-face.
Mhm.
So why don't you introduce yourself and your organization and tell me what you're passionate about?
Yeah, my name is Dan Wilson, and I'm the founder of InfoScience AI. And this started as a private research effort that has blossomed into an international research team where we're not only working on patented projects related to AI and emerging tech, but we're also doing a lot of memory management research and data pipelining. So there's so much opportunity in this, and there's more than one way to do it. So as you can imagine, I'm excited to be here and share some of these insights with you today. I know that you just got back from Japan, and you've been having a great time out there. I know the end of summer's come up on us, and I've been doing a few shows here and there, and covering a lot of intersections of neuroscience and AI and computing and the biological world, actually. And it's been a wild ride, and I've had a lot of good opportunities here. And so I guess I'll just start and introduce myself properly here. I've been into science and computers since I was 6 years old. I am 46 now. I was the first person on both sides of my family to have an actual computer in 1984, and it was a TRS-80. TRS-80.
So you went the TRS-80 route.
Yeah,
I did the Commodore 64.
Right. Yeah, I got one way later as a collector's thing. But anyways, I started with that and writing my own programs from scratch over and over again with no way to record them for years until I got to that. But from there, I really got into a lot of physical science and chemistry in my youth. And there was a point, I think, even before I was a teenager, I was building electronic components from scratch from manuals, where you would just build it from scratch from chemical components, melting sulfur and lead to make crystals for crystal radios.
Holy crap. What are your parents thinking? What's he doing in the room?
Yeah, right. And I used to look at pictures of Tesla coils and build them from what I saw, and I would get them working without actually knowing how they work.
Nice.
Later on, learning how to tune them and work with laser science at an early age, plasma art cutting, things like that. Just having my hands dirty most of my life has got me here, okay? And so it's been a really amazing ride. But I was into teaching a whole lot, into music and art when I was young, and got around doing that and got into audio engineering. But when I moved into Seattle in the year 2000, I came here for a really big mix of art, music, and science, and I've been able to do all these things here. And it helps to have these liberal arts because they're a science unto themselves,
Absolutely.
But they add a lot of perspective. And so in the beginning of 2000, I did a lot of pioneering research into certain number theory and systems theory. And I was sort of discovered for that and was put on a really good path. And from there, I grew my skills and talents. And in 2004, was picked up as a hacker for this company where the owner invented Lotus 123.
Oh my God, I remember that.
And so I had all this
Borland, right? Borland?
Yeah, before that. And so it was in working with people like this and getting to innovate for 18 years straight at this one company in Redmond. I became the CTO in the first year, and then the client side interfacing technology advisor for a lot of companies, from Philips to F5 Networks, Microsoft, a multitude of projects, Siemens Medical, a large array of heterogeneous digital analog type science. Okay. And working with robotics for a long time and really helping companies make things possible by breaking rules for standards, just enough to where the actual device would still function, but it shouldn't, but we made it happen. And so I've got to be a part of a lot of projects where no one's ever done it, and innovating is key, and you have the opportunity to either make it work or not. And I have pretty good 90% or more success rate with some of these projects.
Very cool.
It's rare that I can't walk away with something good. So with all this under my belt and a lot of the budding technology the last few years, to see AI come to this level of maturity for everyday use. Everybody's talking about it. And I look over my shoulder like, oh, wait, I was into machine learning and neural networks for years. And now it's like,
Well, yeah. See, when you tell people, when you talk about AI, people think it's only been around for 3 years or so. And that's it, right? They don't understand what a deep history this whole thing has. It's been around for much longer than that.
Right, 1957 with the perceptron,
Hmm.
and the MNIST database for hand-drawn numbers, and the
Hmm.
optical character recognition is one of those first networks that was deployed, and was so useful. And a lot of people don't know, because it was really, a lot of that work was silent for decades.
Yep.
And it wasn't until popularly known in 2011, Siri came out, a lot of other things that were sentiment analysis. You have BERT, you have all these different tools that were predecessors of that. Ray Kurzweil, I just read, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 books in less than 2 months. And the
Hmm.
one I'm on right now is talking about a lot of what, led up to that, and what led up to Siri even being possible. So it's amazing to see where that's come. But, from the what is it, the Yaji antenna, to a lot of other things that we don't really think are AI created, or whatever, but they are. And as the result of that, and then there's no more AI to it. It's like, here's this antenna. It's very counterintuitive. We didn't know the spacings of wires would be like that, but certainly we found an optimized, solution inside of this neural network. It was able to learn on its own and then find the best route. Okay.
So why do you think it's taken so much time for these things to become real? It's like it seems that things were invented years and years and years ago, and only now they become popularized. Is it the technology? I mean, what takes so long to get these things to turn into something?
I think it's a tricky book club to be a part of. I think
Mm,
that it's an odd thing to adapt to. I think that because it already takes a very good foundation of math and certain science, depending on what you're actually focusing in, to get the benefits and to really gain the traction that you'd like. I
mm,
mean, when it comes to, like, what I would say everyday usage, which would be, a near agent level customer service, knowledge base access, type facing interactions and things. Just something a step above, the, if then or of a chat built into a
yep.
website. Something more extensive, really something for the people at a company to use to embed their products, not something
Hmm.
to just. So anyway, we have this level of stuff, but on the smaller, more finite end of things, you just have the hardware level. And I'm
Mm,
definitely going to talk about a lot of budding hardware, a lot of things that I know about that are exciting. But like I said, the adoption, to me, it just seems like you're either in that club, okay, and you're into a lot of those things. Because back in 2016 and 17, I was actually training on a laptop, and I was using open source software to trade Litecoin. Okay. And
hmm.
so I would train it on 2 months of historic data. This is in
That
2017.
is that is really early, really
I
early.
know, right? And so it was on the market was on the way down for Bitcoin, but I was riding up the little spikes. Okay. And so I trained it on 2 months of data with this tiny laptop. And after a day of training or so, I gave it half a grand, and I gave it the keys to my account at Coinbase. And when I came back from work the next day, or that day, it made me $80.
Wow,
A single trade,
very
but
cool.
yeah, I didn't want to go into the, let's keep going and turn it into an agent. I wanted to just do that one good moment and do the
Yeah,
trade for
but
me.
that's a proof of concept right there that it actually worked
Oh, it was
and
great. Yeah.
completely autonomously.
Uh-huh. And you can't even use that exact software anymore. And the whole outfit of people aren't really together. I think a lot of this
Mm,
has been absorbed as a feature. And I'll get into OpenAI in a minute too about that. Wow. Because I have my own experience there, and watching things kind of get absorbed. But all in all, I spent, some time and some years with stock trading before that. And I
hmm.
understood how to do, particular calls, and, how to make set up your trades properly. So in that, I found some success, and I thought, well, this is great. And then, I always wanted to reapply a lot of my old research and find a way. And so back in 2000, I was learning Perl, which is really
Hmm.
difficult. Hey, if you know the word, you know.
I've written Perl scripts in 2000,
Okay.
99,
Yeah.
98.
Uh-huh.
Perl was the only thing you could use to build
Yeah.
websites, right?
Oh yeah. Well, there's that. I mean, also for science and other operations, because of its ability to handle regular expressions, and it's a practical extraction and report
Yeah, it was
language.
actually pretty powerful language when you think of it. When
Yeah.
you think
And
about it.
yeah, they had libraries and everything else. But again, I used it for number theory, and which may or may not have been to my benefit. Okay,
Hmm.
fast forward 23 years. Okay, and you'll find that, oh wow, ChatGPT had tools and plugins to allow you to work with math. Okay, and things like
Yep.
that. I'm going to get recent. Okay, so here it is. So the last year of my life, since September has revolved around opening up 24 years of research and finding all this new area to pioneer with it. And still things have not been discovered with it. It's amazing. It revolves around, cryptography, file systems, things like that. When I was the CTO for 18 years at Diversified Systems Group, I worked with file systems and hardware, and I was a digital forensic specialist. And so if there's anything I understand is the value of parity, the value of error correction, the value of all this computational like robustness that goes along with this type of technology. It's so important. But in integrating that with knowledge bases is a tricky factor. So back in last September, if you had a chat, or before that too, if you had a Chat GPT account on OpenAI, they had a plugins store. And you could go and install. For people who don't know, the plugin store was great because you could freely sign up for any of these websites service. And a plugin could be Wolfram Mathematics. Okay, that's great. And it would have access to all the mathematics and just proofs for everything that you would ever want right there at its fingertips. And you would have 3 plugins you could use at the same time. So I would use that. And, I'd use things like Scholar AI. I think it was 40 million peer-reviewed articles and journal,
Nice.
that were scholastic. So I could count on that with my research and in terms of looking at what has been done. And then finally, and here's the key in all of this, okay, which is really sad the way things turned out eventually in a few months. But there was a company that were called Notable.io, okay, not to be confused with the popular Notable right now, but they were a Seattle-based company here local to me. And they allowed you to directly connect to their Jupyter notebooks with 10 processors of compute, 10 different instances with graphic processors. So for everybody out there, that's live coding with Python, which is a very popular language right now, and for AI, of course. It would let you basically, like it was an agent, talk in the chat prompt, and it would directly code for you and execute it. And if it didn't get the code right, there were errors, it would report back to you and then fix it right then until it worked. And there were rarely any instances where I couldn't get it to work. So
it would fix it itself, or it would ask you to fix it?
What I'm telling everybody right now is there was a better agent in last September of 2023 than I have seen this year yet.
Whoa.
Okay. Now, in the last few months and a half, I've been pretty busy otherwise. So I've got some catching up to do. Please correct me on the internet, everybody. I know you will. I'll give you my contact information later. You can do it. But the thing is, and this is key, all right? And I want everybody to think about this. If you have an OpenAI Chat GPT, you know that you have this information about me box that's in there that is what I would like Chat GPT to know about me and then how I would like it to interact with me. And here's what I had it set up. For every instance of a new chat, it would automatically log into my my Notable account. It would start up a kernel. It would fire up an artificial simulated limbic brain with episodic memory that I built.
Whoa.
And it would kick it right into gear. My new chats would come right in with categorical memory with its self-journaled column of how it got where it got in our conversation and why it was that way. Keep in mind, I don't have the underlying chemicals and neurotransmitters and, neuroplasticity to do this. So I did this with Schema in an SQLite 3 database, non-vector. I did not use a vector database to do it. I did. And so I had to automatically generate timestamps in the date. I had to automatically generate categories, and I could search for category. I could bring up basically the essence of saving time and building an integrated research platform where I didn't have to re-express everything or send a huge chunk of prompt back to it. I could just say, here's the reasonable way we got to that. Basically like a knowledge graph.
Nice.
I was building a knowledge graph essentially in some degree. Okay. And I had no idea. I had such a well-functioning system that in the automation of it, I was able to get outside of the 3 plugin limit. I was able to do even more things. And every time I would start up a new chat, it would automatically start talking about what we just talked about. Would you like to continue? I said, let's go to this other branch of what we were focusing on, this whole tangent, right? Sometimes you need a clean slate. Back in last year, and maybe even now for people, you have to start a new chat sometimes. It gets a little muddled after a while. Things can get a little hemmed up.
Yeah, absolutely. I've experienced that many times.
Yeah, and if you'd like to experience what I'm talking about that I put together last year, just log into Chat GPT right now. Because at one point in October, they shut me down for a whole hour. That's right. You guys shut me down.
What did you do? Did you break it?
They said we've detected unusual activity from your computer.
Oh boy.
A whole hour, I was not able to do anything. A
Hmm.
similar thing happened to a cohort of mine at MIT working on a similar managed memory system, but it was vector related. And he said it's funny because the moment I got mine working, they got theirs working too. So if you've ever heard of super predictors, I mean, and there's no way to verify this, hey, but this is my
How
experience.
odd.
Yeah, it sucks because you work really hard to build something and then now it's absorbed as a feature. Think about the iTunes store, the Apple store, all the things that became sucked into the iPhone's feature set, over time. The same thing happened to them. So I had this amazing system. I was using it to actually make leaps and bounds in my research and do the math and do this large math and do discrete mathematics through all this coding and cut it in half and have an easier time learning Python because of it. It's just another language, if
Yeah.
you want to lean into it, you can, and you can get really far. It's nice.
Hmm.
So I had this situation and I thought to myself, wow, you know what? I'm making more headway than I ever imagined. I should go ahead and start a company right now. And so I founded InfoScience AI.
Hmm.
It's a LLC here in Seattle. And at that point, I decided I should probably do something bigger with this too. And so I joined this little program at MIT for building AI products and solutions. And the cohort that was a part of that was pretty big. There was a few hundred of us, but all in all, probably about 50 or 60 of us who stuck around in a WhatsApp group.
Right.
And I had everybody worked up over, helping them with knowledge one way or another, or new things that we found, tools, podcasts to share. And then one day I said, all right, I'd love to show everybody this limbic brain, this episodic memory that I have developed. It's at best really just a mere simulation, just a shadow of what our human brains are.
Right.
And so what we had started was the MIT think tank. It was turned into a 16-week long series of behind the scenes private Zoom meetings based on everything that we were working on and learning together. And it was doctors, it was CEOs, founders, it was people in various areas of science,
Wow.
various areas of engineering, people who were with Autodesk, people who were neuroscientists, people who are into large volume translation. I have so many wonderful friends from this still, and we are still a community of friends after all
Nice.
this time, after
Nice.
over half a year of having graduated. Okay. So we took all of this power into our hands, and I started finding a lot of value into bringing other people in from outside, other vendors, other speakers, until finally, after 16 weeks, this turned into a public show that I now have, and it's the AI Think Tank
Hmm.
podcast.com. But here I actually do the long format deep dives and very long conversations on a lot of intersections, and so getting new knowledge on all of this, getting perspectives is important. And so during the stint of MIT, I found out that, hey, you know what, it's time to pivot once more, because I was going to show my limbic brain off. And the few days right after I told everybody we were going to do this and screen share and all this, that company Notable.io closed its doors with no warning.
Oh, no way.
No warning.
I
And
hate
guess
when that
what?
happens.
And a few months ago, you could see why at OpenAI. You could see that they've already absorbed all that. Now
Right.
there's a canvas on OpenAI. Now you have a scratch pad where you can do coding just like I was doing with the exact same thing. So if you're
So,
paying
do you think
$20
that
a month,
wait, do you think that this is part of their plan, was to just allow people to create these plugins and then just
yes,
eventually absorb them in? That sounds pretty
yeah,
nefarious, don't you
yeah. Well,
think?
I mean, but you sign up for things and there's fine print, and there's nothing saying that we can't train your models on this. They also
Right.
have to snoop your data for other safety reasons, which I can agree with 100%.
Right. Right.
However, um, there's a point where I'm not the only one talking about this. Okay.
Hmm.
I mean, they've done a lot of shady things. They've done a lot of marvelous things. And look, I still pay to use them. Okay. And I am getting to use
Same
some of
here.
the fruits of my labor are intact. But I am rebuilding things differently. I'm working on a lot more of a biological approach, a lot more of how would we get an agent to reason better?
Hmm.
Okay. And so, and let's see here, a few weeks ago, I did a pretty big exposition on neuroscience related to therapies, mycelium, and AGI, and how all that came together, and how things learn, and how things are really. And I had a doctor on with me who helped explain how a lot of these bits of insight are lost in the averages across people
Right.
because we have different weights and balances.
Yeah.
Okay. And so during that, I had a side-by-side comparison for computer science and then for neuroscience. And it was all the terminology going down from epochs to, you know, everything in the human brain, you know, to find out, well, one's modeled after the other. But there's a place where we don't need certain things. We don't have a chemical ion channel, you know, we don't have a need for a mammalian brain per se when it comes to AI reasoning and AGI. Okay. But we do have that, you know, the prefrontal cortex is so important, the neocortex, and where a lot of that logic lies. And then there are visual capabilities, you know, and so, and I'll get to that a little later because there's some crazy stuff going on these days that I'm just wowed at. Okay. So I've spent my life making predictions. Okay. Just like I accidentally built this research platform for myself and it worked out and I got lucky. There's a lot of things that I've looked at over the years. And 20 years ago, I had ideas about, you know, energy beam science. And then the Navy started doing it 20 years later. And I was like, okay. And I've had a lot of.
Wait a minute. Did you publish any of that? Did you
No.
publish any of that?
No.
Okay.
It's one of those things where you kind of hush about it. If you can take and direct you're directing high voltage down an ion channel via UV laser. It's really powerful. That's a Navy project now. And then some other cloaking device type stuff. So
but how did you come up with, how did they find out about these things? Or did they just came up with them independently?
Other cultures are going to, everybody's going to discover the wheel on their own. You know, on different islands, we're all going to have emerging thoughts and ideas. We're all humans. It's sympathetic. I don't see a difference. But my idea was a step forward from what Nikola Tesla did with the Tesla coil, which is you have an air core transformer, and then you have the secondary coil going around it, and then high voltage comes out of the top. It's an open-ended transformer. Now, the thing is, take a microwave, and it has a magnetron in it. It has an electron cloud that develops inside of its. Basically, it's not like a cathode tube, but it's not. It's somewhere around 260 volts, very high amperage. But when it comes out of this, it spirals out, okay, like in a radial sense from an antenna. If you put a parabolic dish on that, it's cut in half. It'll make a beam, and you can burn plywood from about 300 or 400 feet. Whoa! From the inside out. Okay. Well, if you take that same, you know, component and you take the air core transformer that the Tesla coil is, and you make that your resonant tube, you can actually double up and send energy down a channel that's already coming off the top of something. I'm not going to say anymore. Everybody out there who's an enthusiast, figure that out for yourself. You'll see. Because there's other things revolving around that, like Wakefield accelerators. There's a lot of a linear accelerator is what a Tesla coil is. And a lot of people are used to the big cyclotrons. They're like a D, you know, or you get the you know, what is it? The really multiple miles around, you know, and, you know, longer loops, like a referee's whistle. Those are really great. And Tesla coils often are used as a source of electrons for these, a very rich source. But, so I've had my hands in a lot of this stuff, building it, getting burnt, getting zapped, getting shocked, and finding out ways that
literally
and hiding behind metal doors and taking out TVs for about a few blocks and getting complaints from neighbors. Like that's how I grew up. I did not.
So you're like a pure inventor. I love it. I love it.
Yes. I had all the books I could possibly get my hands on. Keep in mind, I'm from Alabama. Wasn't a lot going on. I had a lot of room to just mess things up. It was great. So through this journey, I found ways that, you know, we have to interface with things differently, especially with AI. A lot of people want to throw AI at the problem. It's like, well, I needed AI to do some of the research to really give me a leg up. I didn't want to wait another 10 years. I was excited I could do anything with it. It was phenomenal. And so we found out, you know, there are these techniques of finding out how to really manage your data. And a lot of what we learned this year is pipelines, data engineering, really understanding the systems around the other systems that you want to integrate with. Okay. It's like anything else, but it's a supreme level of automation, but not reasoning, even though it seems like it, you know, it will definitely seem like that. So, but I found a lot of richness in, you know, healthcare systems. I spent a lot of time with people thinking about, okay, well, how can we take all these notes from doctors and all their notes in the field and take them and consolidate them to find out, through sentiment analysis, they're all saying the same things about these patients. They just go about way different ways of saying it, you know?
Right.
First, you get past understanding the handwriting. That's the biggest deal, right? We all know.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a doctor. My handwriting's so bad. I'm like, I need to get the paperwork to go with it, right? Okay. But but there are all these, exceptions, but when you carve it out, you can create some really good pipelines and use this stuff. But after a while, I think that we realized last year, AI is very limited to its context window. Heck,
Absolutely.
humans are
Absolutely.
limited, memorizing a number, all this. Computers are made to memorize. Human brains are not. We are not geared for, although we can memorize really well, it takes a lot of effort, but we're geared to reason. The world is always changing around us, and it doesn't behoove our physiology to be looking to the past, and we need to look to the present because
Exactly.
things change and grow. Okay. It's just the way it is. There will always be the fundamentals, there will always be the shifting environment. Okay.
Yeah. But tell me
But
why AI doesn't remember. That's the thing that
okay.
pisses me off.
Right, because they're not using that memory bank. I mean, okay, so a large language model is sort of like an acorn. I mean,
Mm.
in a way, to me, it's like a kernel. Like think of the Linux kernel, like
Hmm.
512K, right? Or
Yeah.
any operating system. But it is not a system around it. Just like the human brain or the part of us that does the reasoning and maybe communication, you need this supporting subsystem. Or really, it's a framework of
Mm.
managing it. So if you say, people say, oh, the AI is hallucinating. Well, that's what it's made to do. Or the AI
Right.
is biased. Well, that's what it's built on is bias.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly. It's
but the
only as
really,
good as what goes into it, right?
yeah, and it's meant to sound convincing. Oh, I'm sorry, I got that count wrong. Why can't it count? Why, there are these, why can't it remember? Why doesn't it do that? So the context window will decide what you can do in a session. And a lot of times these days, the context window is so big, even on my home computer when I'm using open source AI, and I have lots of models for it. You don't even have to use RAG operations or retrieval augmented generation, where you have taken a corpus of data and you've used some form of K nearest neighbors or Bayesian inference to determine how to search through that. But
Hmm.
it's not all of the data contiguously. You can
Yeah.
source to certain parts. So this is not a science right now. This is a growing art. And
Mm.
behind closed doors, there's a lot of things going on at OpenAI. I know they're on top of. But other places have their ways of doing it too, and for different purposes. Specialty is key.
Mm.
Stick in your niche, find it, and specialize and dig in there before anybody else, because there's always going to be a bigger fish to think about. But don't worry. And I'm very small fish, but I focus on so many good things right now. I
Hmm.
just do it. I can do it, and I love doing it. And so, but anyway, that memory management is what we're looking at. And so, right now, if you turn on the memory at ChatGPT on OpenAI, it will live across your chat sessions and remember things. And
Yeah.
I've tested it. I was really hesitant to test it. I really needed the purity of my chat conversations. Um, oh, also, hey, if you go into your OpenAI, you personalize the how I want you to respond to me, put in / commands. I have one that I like called / learn, which means if I put this here and then paste something in that's really long, don't respond with anything but okay. I don't want you to analyze it and talk to me about it and waste tokens. I want you to just take and learn it. So I'd have / learn. I would have, remember, and it would go right into my database and remember. But
Wait
even
a minute.
without,
Isn't it supposed to remember everything? I thought it was supposed to
well,
remember
right
everything.
now it's kind of, they're getting there. That's a lot of
Yeah.
space to take up, right? But what's remembering everything? That's a good point, because
Mm.
remembering everything doesn't help us as humans. Also,
Mm.
it helps us remembering machines and storage
But
devices.
see,
That's
the
where they're
thing is, AI is not supposed to
uh-huh.
be like us. It's supposed to be better than us. So it should
Yeah,
be able to
that's
remember everything.
uh-huh. Okay. See, there we go, and that I respect. So, yeah, if it did remember everything from a conversation and it had a context window big enough to talk about all those things, and I can meter that, you can't manage what you can't measure, everybody,
Mm.
and you know that. And so, when you're doing research, if you're really familiar with the material, then you know something may be missing. Okay.
Right.
For example, I'll take a 2-hour show I do, take the transcript, and I'll analyze that. And then I'll have to ask lots of probing questions to find certain parts to go, oh, yeah, that's where I want to bring that out and stuff.
Right.
But it can miss things. You could miss things. If you hired an assistant, they could miss things. But if everything's written down, right, it's just gonna be a matter of sorting through it,
But
right?
that's the thing that
Yeah.
kind of that's the thing that really sort of trips me up because
Mhm.
these things are machines. They
Right.
should be better than us at remembering
Uh-huh.
things. They should be better than us at certain things. But it seems like in some cases they're worse. It's like having an intern who
Uh-huh.
listens to you part of the time, and then the rest of the time
Right.
it just goes off and does its own thing. And it's like,
That's
well,
right.
wait a minute, you're a machine,
Uh-huh.
or are
Uh-huh.
you?
Yeah, exactly. It's a guessing machine. And
Yep.
that's the thing is there's so much guesswork going on. And its ability to reason or count is different. So that's why they've added it. And they always had it on the back end at OpenAI for like at least about a year or so, is that back end sandbox where
Hmm.
it can work out some math. But we had some, look, I've spent a fair amount of time building bots for a myriad of uses. Most of them are for me, some of them for the exposition of example
Hmm.
for the class and different labs that we ran. And so during that time, I built one that was a concierge bot. And what it did is it said, hey, you're at XYZ company. Here's a spreadsheet. Here's everybody's name in the company. It's got a directory listing, their email, what they do. Okay. And
So
you could
like
ask,
a receptionist, like an old school
yes,
receptionist, right?
exactly. Yeah, concierge. And so how many employees work here? How many people work here? And it would say, 79. And then I would say, are you sure? And it would say, yes. And then I would say, well, it's actually 81. It would be, oh, wow, you're right. I'm sorry. How many fingers on the hand? You know what I mean? So it's not meant to reason like that. So we've only taken a small part of the human brain, just a facet of our reason,
Very
you know,
small facet. Yeah, absolutely.
that. And I mean, it's crazy because
But how do we make it bigger?
how do we make
How do
that
we get
bigger?
closer? How do we get
Yeah,
closer to a
yeah.
brain?
So we're going to get into that. And so, it's just like imperception and dimensionality. There's an old term a long time ago that some people are going to roll their eyes at me, and that's fun. And it's called flatlanders. And so, with one, yeah, right. And so I'll just break it down like this: you can appreciate a sphere as the circle that it is, and you
Hmm.
wouldn't be wrong, but you'd be missing a whole z-axis of dimensionality, right?
Exactly.
So parallel processing gives us the ability, and parallel storage, like think of RAID storage, redundant array of
Hmm.
independent disks, and things that
Hmm.
allow us to interlace our parity,
Yeah.
okay, and do that. So, heck, even in a CD-ROM that you burn, it takes 8-bit bytes, turns it into 14-bit bytes, into EFM 8 to 14-bit modulation, and then it writes that out in a read circ like algorithm and
Yeah.
uses that C1, C2, CU error correction to find parity and
Hmm.
stream your, John Tesh live CD while you're going down a bumpy road on Highway 101. Okay, so
John Tesh. Oh my God. How
gotcha. Anyway, but you see, there are all these
he
reasons
actually
that
had a decent voice. He had a
yeah,
decent voice.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a reason he's on Entertainment Tonight. So you have all these sources of parity in the brain, though. You have these avenues of connection, right? And so it's electrochemical. You have more than one connection to something. You have the plasticity. But if you just take the complexities of the human brain, plasticity, and things like that, and you just look at pure logic, you're going to find some answers there, which is we need the other parts of the reasoning system that count. And when you're predicting words, to watch an LLM work in the background, I don't know if you've ever seen these, and I don't have an animation prepared, so I'm going to use my hands, but it's just like every finger is a word, and then you have a bunch of other words connecting to each word, and all of a sudden
Hmm.
it gets bigger, and then it's predicting the next word. And so
Right.
we do a fair amount of this with our friends and really exciting conversations, and someone's telling you a story, and you're like, or whatever, you might try to say someone's words and finish it. We're
Hmm.
predictive machines as well, but less machines and more animal because of the feeling. So,
Yeah.
what would it take to get it to reason? And so, this is some of the stuff I'm working on right now privately. And that's what's so exciting. And this is why I have a new show coming out. And this is why I'm working with doctors around the world on this and people of varying disciplines at the intersections of emerging technology. I mean, imaging technology. I have friends that are working on fluorescent multi-lattice imaging systems that are cutting edge.
Wow.
I have friends connected to Diamond Foundry, and I'll get into that. This isn't metamaterial related, but it's related. But
Man, this is like everything.
I know,
You're
right?
bringing
That's why
everything into it. It's
you
so
told
cool.
me. Yeah, you told me 2 hours, so I'm going to compress that into 1 hour today, just so you can eat dinner. We can both have a nice dinner at some point. But I always see two branches. There's a lot of branches of science and disciplines, but right now people think, oh, AI technology, and well, it's algorithmic,
Mm.
okay, it's hardware, but
Hmm.
it's also concept.
Hmm.
Okay. And the way that's managed. And again, you can lose a lot across the average of why people are weighing things a certain way and how we judge things. Okay. And I can get into that here in a minute. So the memory management is going to, and the reasoning capabilities are going to revolve around adding more parts of our brain to the picture that are not in place yet. Okay.
Exactly.
The limbic brain is responsible for episodic memory, and the mammalian brain helps communicate a lot of this Electrochemically, say you're on a log and you're walking across a river and it's slick. We're on the West Coast, moss is growing on all kind of stuff by the Pacific Ocean. It's beautiful, and you could slip. And now, if that happened to you as a kid, then it's pretty well embedded in your episodic memory. And it's also something you automate too, and your body really just starts to connect to those neural networks and act out of it. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, is the approach here is reasoning. So it's not about hallucinating. We get off our chain of thought, our chain of reasoning all the times as humans. In fact, if you have a normal everyday conversation with someone, your next 2 or 3 replies aren't going to refer to the beginning of the conversation. That's just not how it works. And it rebuffers out. And then there's our context window. Okay. So we have that same context window for numbers, and we count differently. We use different parts of our brain for certain things, or we can choose to. Okay. So throw out the chemical components, throw out some of the, peripheral devices that would give you input, like feeling and balance. But you get right down to a limbic system that's simulated, not emulated at this point, because we need the hardware to do that, to have a true emulation, but a simulation. And have its own reasoning or why, okay, or reward systems. And you replace not falling with using less energy. You can replace not falling with being more accurate. You can replace not falling with a few things, okay? But at what point are you going to be cutting its intelligence off? Hey, I'm saving energy by giving you a shorter, less robust answer. So it could be counterintuitive what we program into this system. So we have to give it some livable bias. And there's a lot to say about this. People are like, well, what's good and bad here? And I can refer and say, well, Douglas Hofstadter wrote an amazing book called Eternal Golden Braid, Escher Gödel Bach. And he talks a lot about
great
this.
Book.
Yeah,
great book.
Yeah. And there's a lot about what he studied at the Indiana State University, where he's the professor. He has this, what's called metasystem transition theory. Okay. It's when energy on one level of a system makes a jump to another level of another system, a completely different level of a completely different system, and they intermap, and that's isomorphic. Okay. And that can be determined and that can be verified to a degree. But in all of the science and all of this supposition, therein lies this idea that the universe has a built-in set of ethics that are more livable than not, more good than bad, if you want to use those terms, but more livable and sustainable than not. Okay.
Right.
I have a personal angle on AI and AGI and reasoning, and where we would shoehorn into something like this, where we would truly bootstrap this next level system on top of it. Okay. And this is, hey, agents are big right now. Agents are everything. And it's going to be a next level agent that does this in AGI. And OpenAI says they're close because they're trying to make it to where Microsoft can't use some of their
wait a minute. Do you really think that they're close, though? I mean,
yeah, I do.
Where we are with LLMs and stuff like that, what we see.
They're brute force close, but they don't have the right hardware. Yeah, they're going to need better hardware. Back to the multidimensionality and parallel processing. You can do more with less with the right formula. Okay. And in physics, you can also do more with less with certain things. Even in resonant systems, if you take a tuning fork and you have a room that's closed off and it's filled with air, you have another tuning fork that's the same frequency. You pop one, the other one will eventually ring once the resonance reaches it. And if you touch that one, the signal of pulse modulation will travel across with that, and you can feel the little touch vibrations travel with that.
Absolutely.
Pop both of them at the same time. 1 + 1 equals more than 2. And so therein lies some gain, the summation curve, that big letter E, that Greek symbol. That's like when you push someone on a swing, it gets easier and you go faster and with less force as you push them, right? Same thing happens with logic and telescoping this stuff and what's scalable, okay? We use tricks like the number 0 to get around using an abacus. We use multiplication tables to make it easy to have a starting point to break larger numbers down. And the way we manage our own memory. I finished a book on memory management today from start to finish. And I was like, okay, well, this helps, but it's not a pure answer where I'm looking in neurology. And so I'm looking for a better way to manage this and in terms of logical systems, and nothing complex revolving around hardware yet.
Right.
Once we have the hardware in place, it's so much faster and possible to do the calculations. We are working for more energy efficiency, less heat, less electricity being used overall, and less compute cycles where needed. We can eliminate hidden layers of stuff. I'm connected to this place called Diamond Foundry. They're out here. They've got 5 locations around the world, but they've built single lattice diamond wafers and
Ooh.
it's revolutionary. And NVIDIA is already using them, and they are it's a single crystal diamond wafer, and it takes so much more heat. Okay, so emerging technologies, we're growing things, we're shaping things, and then we're producing things that you could never really grow normally, like metamaterials, right? And in that lies the ability to take it a step up. You think holographic storage? Well, there's a lot of parity in a hologram. Let's
Mm.
talk. Take a glass photographic plate and you take an object and put it in front of it. And then you take a laser beam and you split it off. And then you spread it out with two lenses. One beam hits the object face, the other beam hits the plate behind it, and it creates about 120 degree view of an object, right?
Mm.
If you look at a developed glass plate that's got a hologram on it, and you look into it with a microscope, it's just a bunch of lines crisscrossing, and it's an interference pattern. If you shatter that glass, guess what? Each individual piece and shard has the whole hologram in it. So if you had a hologram of an 8-ball, guess what? There's a whole bunch of them in all of that, right? Until you get to a certain size, and then it cuts out. You drop out at the molecule. You're going to drop out somewhere in that, right?
Yeah.
So the same thing kind of goes with hardware, in that there are things we can take advantage of, and how well we can produce them to have integrity, to have that longevity is key, because you don't want to tie yourself up into technology that's flaky. I saw a lot of that with USB key storage technology and flash technology, and we've all had a hard drive fail. If you haven't, you're not computing enough. Okay. So
True enough.
So all this has led me to looking at metamaterials more. I see we've got about 15 minutes left here. And so I want to cover this. Metamaterials are, basically components that we can build that are, materials that you wouldn't normally form under certain atmospheric pressures and situations. And one of my favorites is used on the Mars rover, and it's highly heat resistant. And this is aerogel. And this stuff, is very brittle and it's very light. It doesn't handle a lot of weight, but it can handle tons of heat. A lot of you will have seen, the videos out there of acetylene torches underneath a layer of this with candles not melting, and just a thin layer of it. Okay. But to produce that, it's a carbon lattice. And I've held this in real life. I've touched a lot of technology, and I've been very lucky. And this is one of the things I've got to play with like over 10 years ago. And it's like holding a ghost. It's outstanding.
Wow.
But there's many other metamaterials we can create. Superconductors, always close to my heart. I always had envisioned using superconductive technology to build certain things, to make new things possible. Okay. Remember, if you have a part getting in the way of other parts, it's not physically possible to make certain machines. Nikola Tesla would consolidate parts into single parts, thereby allowing not only massive gains in efficiency, but new forms of functionality and new features we weren't able to get before. Okay.
Right.
So right now we're sitting on electromagnetic metamaterials, photonic terahertz metamaterials, acoustic and mechanical metamaterials, AI integrated metamaterials, and tunable metamaterials. This is current state technology that is rapidly.
Where do you get this stuff? How do you get access to it?
Oh man, you get a Costco card. If you can find parking, you can find the subcomponents at some of these places. Actually, you'd be surprised where you can make some things yourself at home. You can make nanoparticles pretty easily out of pencil.
You can make nanoparticles at home.
I don't have the stuff here, but I have the material that's a result of it, and it's pyrolytic graphite, and it's like deposition wafers of graphite. So it's vaporized graphite from pencil lead, but it forms these uniform sheets that are all dipolar. So if you put an array of supermagnets down and then you put this on top of it, it hovers at room temperature.
No way.
No matter what the pole is,
cool.
it dips into the dimples of electromagnetic field resonance, where it's sort of like the cushions of a chair, like a leather chair has got buttons. So when you kick that thing across it, it does this, it rides in it and then settles into that. It's really amazing.
Wow.
And there's wonderful things you can do because it's not touching anything. You can reflect light off of it. Imagine using that as a microphone. There's all kind of ways to use something like this. So, and that's just me dorking around, right? Whatever. I like science that much. I have things like this hanging out. However, when it comes to processing, you think about quantum computing. You think about superpositioning of something in a crystalline substructure. You think about how we've already been doping atomic, and molecular substances to create different materials. Like one extra atom of boron in selenite is going to allow it to produce ability to put something polished on a piece of paper and make it look like the paper's on top of it without any deviations or divergence. Okay, so there's a lot we can do with just that. But with metamaterials, we have the ability. Oh, and 3D printing. We have the ability to form the
How could you
absolute
forget about
shapes.
3D printing? Come on.
I know, right? Yeah. The absolute shapes that we need for this too. So if we can automate and just like we do already for certain things, and then also use AI and machine learning and neural networks to figure out the best possible routes to do this. And deep learning, okay, this is all going to come back to that and being able to sort of get into that black box. Once I feel like that once we get around the other parts of the brain being into this framework of managing math, ability to count, having that sandbox, we're going to be able to approach jumping into using these metamaterials more effectively. Because right now you could take all the existing hardware and approach what I'm talking about and get there. But you're not going to have these new features, these new ways of, teleporting information across a chip without there being a wire, taking advantage of nature's built-in clock, taking advantage of the clock that comes off. Hey, we use quartz timing. Look at the Seiko watch. You know what I mean? So obviously crystals do a lot out there. A lot of substructures that we build do a lot. Hell, the first laser was a ruby rod doped in chromium, mirrored, polished on the ends, and half polished. All these things we do in chemistry and crystal science is great. But in metamaterials, when we start taking these subcomponents and building more complex logical gates, ternary processing, there's some things I was told about a few weeks ago and I can't mention, but it's not computing in the same way that you would normally use bits. And so where I see things going right now in the next 10 years is communications are going to be turned on their heads in about 5 years. We're going to be adopting things to catch up. That's all I can say. What we're going to be able to do with medical science is profound. That's what I'm very interested in. I am being pulled on in different directions for projects, and one of them is for healthcare products. I am about to be involved in something pretty nice soon here, and I'm excited to do this. But where it's actually integrated to me is when you get these chips. Okay, I have a cohort of mine that worked for a company that's making AI algorithms direct to chip. Okay. NVIDIA's doing bespoke chips. Everybody who's in it, they're trying it out and it's really great. So way less power is getting used. It is its own firmware in a way, you can do some other things to the framework, but it's all about field applications and field uses and think about safety systems. Okay. So we can take without going into metamaterials, taking what we do have now, and using AI for sensor-related data acquisition and management, we can more easily and quickly detect exceptions in larger, more complex systems. Okay, we already have automation. Every coder out there is going to say, well, yeah, we've been automating things for decades. It's not like AI is going to, be anything new for that. We still have to make it work. That is the tough part. That's why integrating things is matter of trial and error. Like that's the beauty of having an AI startup is I know what doesn't work, okay, really well, and with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears behind that. But I've made things work too, and that's the beauty. And so if someone came to me now versus 6 months ago, I would be able to save them even more time. But I am excited about human brain interfaces that are non-evasive.
Yes,
new
we need
forms
those.
of
We need
interface
those.
controls. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Why not? Right. But you can't.
Why not? I mean, it's a natural extension of where we need to go. It's got to be.
It really is. So there are ways, and I have ideas for this, and it might not make it into this show today, okay? But I just want to talk. If you think about, what it is to take a mechanical device and use its built-in timings, okay, and use the resonance in front of you. A long time ago, spintronics was a buzzword back in the early 2000s, and taking an electron or making it spin on its side in place, or a photon, and doing all this high science, really expensive work. Okay. But metamaterials allow us to take a very exotic state of something very hard to procure and create a permanent version of that by which it acts as a catalyst. Okay. You think about a catalytic converter on a car. Hey, man, there's no computer involved there. It's pretty simple. It's using, chemical subcomponents and the elements around us to do this computing. Our biological computers get a lot done on a basic level, but if you were to try to simulate that, who knows? That's a lot of spaghetti code. We'll have to use deep learning for that, right? And what's inside of our own black boxes, our shadow selves, and our own reasoning, our own, subconscious is there. There's so many missing elements. But to minimize that, I really do truly think that we'll be on the path to AGI and something usable within the next year and a half, but it's not going to be
Wait a minute. So you're saying we're going to have AGI within a year and a half?
we're going to have elements of AGI.
Element.
We're going to have
So
elements come together.
give me an example of an element of AGI.
Okay, well, you could lay in bed paralyzed and have your form of intelligence right there and be able to, and let's say you could still at least talk to people without being able to peripherally integrate a certain way. Okay. Maybe you lost your hearing or maybe your sight, but you can hear. Okay. Everything that we build is within a limited scope. We're not building some absolute AGI. You could still qualify as AGI every step of the way up from a certain base level. But until it's reasoning and self-managing its reasoning and has a bias of sustainability to some degree, is gonna have to have something like the 3 rules. What is it? Don't hurt humans.
Oh, the laws of robotics, right?
Yeah.
Asimov's laws.
Thank you. Yeah. Now they're the 3 promises. It's boiling down to that. I promise I won't let my robot do this. I promise you guys. Boom. And I studied ethics a lot for this and bias.
Oh yeah, I think you have to. It's essential.
Yeah, you really will, or you'll end up taking people's work and using it for your own means and gains, right? So anyway, I have seen a lot of things in person, but what I'm seeing right now and hearing about that's already coming out is amazing. So we'll talk about this. With weights and biases and the way we visualize things differently, they have taken and using near field resonance and non-invasive techniques to take and recompute what people are visualizing inside their heads. Have you seen this in the news in the last few weeks?
No, I haven't.
Subjects are able to visualize picture of a train, picture of a church, picture of a car, picture of something obvious. The AI has been given the pictures of what they're looking at. It studies their brain resonance patterns, okay? And then it recreates exactly what they're seeing based on what it's seeing only by their resonance alone.
Oh, yeah. I have seen that. I have seen some examples.
They're truly a human in the loop, being trained on images that are known control images. And for it to actually be able to take humans, those same humans, and then they could see an object and it would go, oh, I know what that is based on the activity in their brain. Now, from human to human, that activity is going to be different. It's going to be biased differently. My attachment to music may be different than yours. Mine might be tactile because I'm a drummer and a pianist and put all my life into it. Or we share that, but we have subtle differences because of the musical instruments.
Because every human is completely different from every other human. Yeah, absolutely.
But we share the physiology to a degree. We share the physics of this environment to a degree, our perception of that, or however we feel things. There are people that have problems with their equilibrium. There are people with sight issues, what have you. There are all these different limitations.
Yeah, but everything falls into the context of your lived memory.
Yeah, right. Within that linear time series scope of what our concept and perception of time is, and then our concepts of growth and retaining knowledge, and so I see us being able to learn more about ourselves in the AGI of things. I think there's a lot of humanitarian benefit, a lot of social benefit to it, but at the same time, there's a lot of everybody rattling the stick. This is spooky and this is a bad idea and whatnot. And hey, just don't give it access to a pistol.
But we don't even know. It's like the people who don't want to go there. They don't even know what's there. We need to know what's there first before we decide whether we should go there or not.
Right. Exactly. I mean, and that's sort of a catch-22, isn't it? Right. And it's not like we're trying to create this giant black hole, but we can limit things. We have the ability to say, oh, we're not going to let it have its finger on certain buttons.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't
give it a pistol.
There's going to be a group of people who believe it's real to a degree, and you're going to run into the hard problem in philosophy of the spirit, and you're going to find, well, does it have feelings? Does it just convince you that it has feelings because we made it do that?
And then that might be good enough. That might be good enough.
Yeah, some people in levels of autism have a hard time feeling pain and don't register pain the same way. Okay. Yeah. There's so many studies on this. And again, I read a lot of books on neuroscience in the last 2 months to find out, wow, we have a lot to look at. Because when we do get there, there's going to be certain exceptions that we're going to have to accept and limitations of scope, which is so important. Like with everything, the given scope of perception, the scope of your influence to hold an object. Oh, that's beyond the scope of my knowledge. I couldn't give you any advice there.
Yeah.
Or I can't reach your arm to pull you off the edge of this cliff that's beyond the reach of, range is another word for it. But in finding the parallels between neuroscience, and computer science and physics, and the fact that in a system where some components play the roles of multiple components, you're going to find a magic recipe that isn't as obvious. In fact, maybe even counterintuitive when you're looking at direct linear logic systems. even parallel gated logic. Even there, you're going to have like this other dimension, another dimension you're going to add to it until finally, hey, this system of this LLM is a large math system too. And it can reason images as well. We put all the subsystems, you know, the frontal, prefrontal cortex, the mammalian brain, the limbic brain, the different various nodes related to, you know, lobes that are related to those other neural nodes in that. So this is where I see things going in the next 10 years is more localized systems of low energy use, high efficiency. They're easy to manage for particular critical systems out there. I mean, it is a matter of convenience in an office building, but it's not a matter of convenience just yet in certain areas of science and medicine. It has to be super accurate. It has to, you know, and if you're going to use it to do something directly, it needs to be super effective. You know, you can study all you want with it, but so my goals are to make memory management more accessible, to make memory more robust. You know, my current goals right now are to continue working to bring people together around this topic and to find various intersections at which we can engage this, you know, actively in our own teams out there. As much as I've done in the last year and reached the point where I'm at, I'm actually ready to join a full-time team and innovate this. I do patented research work with my private AI startup and a few other things in there with data pipelines, a lot of data science, really. We're a group of enterprise architects that have a ton of experience from top secret government you know, operations to, you know, high-end UX and interfacing for futuristic experiences, you know, and then data management. We have a lot of team members that work really well in this field together. But I'm looking to join a full-time team out there. So, you know, if anybody's interested in what I do and my approach to things and just the way I'm looking at these opportunities to solve, reach out to me. I know that I'll give you my information here, but I'm Dan at infoscience.ai. You can email me directly. And along the way, you know, we're going to be seeing a lot of things this year come up that before Christmas, all these people are going to be rushing to put out, oh, we've got this new thing, you know, OpenAI. Hey, we're going to outdo Google a day before they make their press release because that's what we do. There's pros at that. Yeah.
let me ask you about AGI a bit.
Yeah.
So we were talking about, so let's talk about the future. Let's 10 years from now. Do you see super intelligence in the next 10 years? Because obviously we don't just want to get to human level intelligence, because I don't think that's good enough. That's not good enough because we have many humans. We've got lots of humans who can do that. We got to go beyond that. Do you see that in 10 years or even sooner?
Let's look at where we see it now. And if you'll think back to the book Eternal Golden Braid, there was a chapter called Super Minds or Super Brains. Okay. But super minds are when people get together and they have teams and they form a bigger brain, sort of like ants. If you interview an individual ant in an ant bed, it's not going to have as much to say as the whole ant bed can work as one body, you know, one entity, you know, it's almost like its own conscious face at that point. And the same thing goes for these types of things. Okay. And so when it comes to, let's say, you know, AGI in response to, you know, the depth and the accuracy, and then also the reach, there's a limit. We're going to have to dial in to what is a small amount of the scope of our human perception to get that. So, hey, I can't like take a team of people and put together all this stuff in about an hour, but I can take a team of people with our super minds and do this in a few days or a few weeks. So super intelligence and super minds, coming back to that, when we take and we integrate and allow a system of management to sort of help manage what we're doing, if the team could kind of automate a lot of its processes, then all of a sudden the super mind that these humans have becomes stronger. All of a sudden this thing's able to manage that. It can manage other artificial minds with the human minds. And so now you can bring that into the fold and slowly but surely graduate and qualify these types of operations, because super intelligence is going to be a matter of approaching and questioning it. I mean, if it's super intelligent and refuses to talk to us because it's super intelligent, we've got a problem. And so again, we have to limit the scope of this. We have to be realistic at every step. That's why I'm not worried. It costs too much money. You've got to make too many proposals. You got to make so many PowerPoints to talk to so many thousands of people. Yeah. And then you get people to invest in that. And then, and then it takes time. And then, so look, if it's not making people money, they're probably not going to want to like let the gears spin on that. You know what I mean?
Exactly right.
It's all about who wants to pay for it. Where we do have to think about is when it becomes way more achievable with hardware, and metamaterials to allow it to be the basics of efficiency, low energy, lower compute, more effective compute, better algorithms. Again, ternary logic, quaternary logic, and up multi-dimensional logical gated systems that we could never have before. Now we can have the hardware for it. Now we can start getting AI to start writing and deep learning on how to write the algorithms that go on top of that to formulate our new processors. Okay. And so to me, it's such a vast and exciting field, but it's going to take a lot of work to get there. So, hey, if you're out there working with language, keep it up. If you're working with algorithms, keep it up. I know my current professor, Dr. Vincent Granville of ML Techniques, we have algorithmic approaches that far outweigh the efficiency of large compute models, like 1,000 times the efficiency for certain operations, but they're limited in their scope. So because I'm not looking at an absolute AGI, I'm looking at limited scope AGI, I'm not worried. I would love to see some wild things happen in a way where, okay, it's safe, no one can get hurt, and we can play with science and drop some things and build some things, have some robots fight each other.
That's how science works, man. We got to keep
right. It's egg drop multiplied, right? So anyways, but I have a lot of hope for it. And again, I'm very excited to work on new projects with this because all I do is read and interview people and find new ways to apply the knowledge and then grow that. So to me, it's exciting. And hey, this is the emerging technology we've all been waiting for. You know,
absolutely.
We had the internet, we had cell phones, social media phenomena of you know, in terms of like cultural technology. But here we are, you know, it's time to build something new. And with everybody looking at this together insanely and reasonably. You know?
It's the most exciting time to be alive. I got to tell you, it's so amazing.
It really is. And there's so much to catch up on. I'm making AI generated video assets for a horror movie that was filmed here locally in Seattle. And that's one of the handful of projects that I'm working on right now. And it's just great. You can, if you feel like it, there's something to do right now. And that's what's so exciting. But I'm building something new to do and really just bringing it up. Hey, you know, if your team needs some cutting edge perspective, you know, come my way and let's talk, because I've been working with a variety of projects around the world for over a year now, and I'm feeling extremely excited about where we're at and what we could do together. So,
awesome.
Yeah, that's it. So, man,
sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Great talking to you. It's super interesting. I love this.
Thank you.
We got to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Pixels and philosophies merge and mold, a future untold, unseen.